What this talk is about is the following use case. I'm working with few bootcamps for full stack web developers. And you know for yourself, and I know for myself, that for a junior developer, it's in many cases, it's not easy to find a job because companies want you to have few years of experience. Okay, so
Yeah.
they prefer senior developers. So junior developers have rough times, and maybe they can go maybe months without finding a job. And I was thinking about videos that someone developer can share, like you, can share its experience and inspired these juniors web developers when they are struggling, and maybe they can be inspired by other former junior developers, and maybe they can get tips and make their way to their first position as junior first developers in more ease and with more tips. So this is the subject of the talk. So I had two talks in Hebrew, and I know that you don't speak Hebrew, but it was in Hebrew because I live in Israel. But you know, junior web developers, they are all around the world, not just in Israel. I hope they are in USA and all around the globe. So I hope that if you can share your experience, it can help junior developers to get a job faster.
Yeah. It's something I've worked with a lot of junior engineers and aspiring junior engineers to sort of get to that level. One thing that I do right now, for instance, is I mentor on a platform called Mentor Cruise. And I would say about 3 out of 4 of my mentees are in that exact position where they're either recent college grads, recent boot camp grads, or not even recent boot camp grads, like graduated boot camp a year and a half ago,
Year and
tried,
a half ago.
tried doing it on their own,
Yeah.
and then kind of, whatever happened, and then they come back a year and a half and like this, they might have not done anything for the last 6 months. So that's a really common scenario. And one thing I would encourage people to is seek out a mentor, someone hold you accountable and help you along the path. So I think kind of what a mentor's job is to say, hey, this is the path that gets you there quickest, right? And like that's really my job. So like just 2 weeks ago, I had somebody who I worked with for about 4 months who he graduated the boot camp about a year and a half ago. And that was, he had was getting no interviews before. And so we had him start interviewing after about the 2-month mark. So within 2 months, he went from no job to making about 70K in his first developer job. And that's a fairly common scenario. So if you have the money, I would definitely recommend checking out mentorcruise.com. There's a lot of very highly rated engineers on there, not just me. So that'd be one thing I would say. The other thing is your resume needs to, and this is another thing that helps having a mentor, because like, what does your resume need to look like, right? Sometimes people forget that the first line of defense with getting a job is recruiting. And so your resume actually needs to be tailored towards recruiters and not towards engineers, as crazy as it sounds.
But you know that your resume, after so the first person that get the resume 99% of the time is an HR person,
Yep.
but then there is a technical guy, and the technical guy get the resume. So you know, the resume maybe should speak two languages, language that HR understand and language that technical person understand, because they are going to get also
Yeah, the technical people are going to understand no matter what. I think I think the key here is to dumb it down for non-technical individuals. Um, and so one of the very first things you should have in your resume in terms of the order of precedence is you need to have your skills broken out in individual categories, front end, back end, other. That'd be a very basic sort of structure. And the reason for that is as they're looking for keywords like anything else. And same thing with bullet points on your, any sort of experience, bullet out those keywords. These are people who, they're not engineers. They just know that they're looking for someone with React. They're looking for someone, and then you stack it with projects and a whole bunch of other stuff. But really, you need to be refining that resume. The third tip that I would give that I find very, very helpful, and it's helped me get my first dev job and has helped a lot of the people I've worked with, is take on and fill out about 60 to 90 minutes a day of apps until you get a job every single day, Monday through Sunday. And then the way that you're going to be looking for the jobs is you're only going to be looking for jobs in the last 24 hours that have been posted. The reason for that is you're going to be looking at jobs that are going to have very few candidates. So they're actually going to see your resume, and you're not going to be wasting time on jobs that they've already accepted a candidate and are moving forward. So you're going to be getting the highest sort of utilization of getting noticed and not wasting time. So that would be how I would go about looking for a job as a sort of a junior engineer or aspiring junior engineer.
How about spending the time that you have doing side project, because side project get you better in if you're doing side project in React, you get better in React. You can show other people what you know, and the more that you program, the more experience you have, and the more how do you say it, confidence you have in your abilities. So how about building a portfolio in the time that you have?
Yeah, I would say so that's all good, and you should obviously be building projects and doing all that sort of stuff and staying on top of it. The only thing I would say is that that's not where I think a lot of people suffer. I don't think a lot of people suffer in the actual process. I think they suffer getting interviews, and interviewing, you find out very quickly where you have gaps, right? So if you go and interview and like they give you a basic algorithm and you can't solve it, then you go back home and you study algorithms. So you go and you get a bunch of React questions, you fill the React questions, you go and you fill in this gap. If you go and get a take-home project and you can't for the life of you handle responsive design of it, you go and fill that out. You're going to need to study, and the expectation on everyone's end is that you know how to code, right? I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation that you're going in for a junior level role and that you don't know how to code. Now, do you know how to code such as a senior engineer? No, but can you get something to be working? I think that's a fair assumption. So if you're not there, you obviously need to be there. And when I work with individuals, I say that my expectation of them is 3 to 4 hours every single day, Sunday through Saturday, every single day. And 90 minutes of that is filling out apps. About 2.5 hours of that is coding and building projects and studying, because that's kind of where you need to be if you want to be successful. Because one of the things people have to understand as junior engineers is you're an unproven asset. Like nobody really knows what you can do. Like even now, I work at Amazon. I have 5 years experience. I've built 10 plus courses and have a YouTube channel. I've done podcasts, I've spoken at conferences. They still give me 6-hour tests to see if they want to give me jobs. Like now imagine, and that's being a proven asset. Now take yourself where you have a limited amount of projects, you have no work experience, and you're coming in for I'll use the example of my previous mentee at $70,000 a year in the US. That's more than the average family makes. That's a high salary by most, especially a high entry level salary by most standards. And you're coming in with no experience in getting that. You have to prove yourself. And so it's not easy. It's definitely possible, but it takes a lot of dedication and work and consistency. And that's sort of, if the hardest thing you're ever going to have to do is not actually learning to code. And a lot of people think that it's because learning code is going to be frustrating, but it's also going to be fun. The hardest thing you have to do is really fill out the apps every day, interview, and then get into the sort of interview process. That's the hard part of software engineering for at every part of it, whether you're at the very beginning and you're just trying to like go through the normal interviews, or later on where you're doing 5-hour interviews and you have to study data structures and algorithms and stuff like that.
What are your tips for developers to prepare for interviews? Okay, we have specifically prepare for interview. What tips?
Okay, so the first thing is, believe it or not, just start interviewing. Like, forget about preparing, go into the interview. So too often people are afraid of failing, and they hold off way longer than they need to, and sometimes never get started. So going into some interviews and bombing them. Yeah, exactly. You go and you sort of, it stops being theoretical, right? Like, so when I work with people, oftentimes it's 4, 6, 8 weeks tops before I'm having them interview. Go in, feel it, because yes, this is my experience, this is whatever, but I need you to know what these interviews are like and now what to expect. Because you're probably not going to get a job. No matter how much you prepare, you're probably not going to land your first interview. It's unlikely. You could, but that's not the fastest way to your goal. Also, a much faster way is going in the interview, see what they value, see what the process is like, get accustomed to it, and sort of regurgitate it out. There's also a lot of great courses, and it depends on what part of interview you're going for as well. So like the first thing I would say, like, a lot of juniors engineers go for like front end roles starting. That seems to be a fairly common thing. Is like I personally have a course called the 100 Front End Interview Question Challenge. But the whole course is going of 100 of the questions you would get through a technical screen. Like, what's the difference between var, const, and let? Explain async to me, async wait to me. What's the CSS box model? These sort of very fundamental questions things that you should be comfortable asking. So being prepared that way, doing some basic algorithms, going on like Code Signal or even Free Code Camp and doing that and being able to solve some of these. When people think I'm joking, but when I used to give a lot of interviews, at the second company I worked at, I used to give a lot of interviews there, and we would ask people to essentially do FizzBuzz, and 9 out of 10 engineers couldn't do it. They just couldn't on a whiteboard modulo 3, modulo 5, and print fizz and buzz. And it's surprising.
What is FizzBuzz?
Okay. So FizzBuzz is a very popular sort of cult-like algorithm problem where I forget who said it. It was like maybe it was like Steve Wozniak, but some high-tech professional said that if you took most engineers and told them, hey, I want you to write an algorithm that takes in a number and prints out up to that number. If it's evenly divisible by 3, print buzz. If it's evenly divisible by 5, print fizz, print buzz. And by buzz, print fizz buzz. So like 3, you'd print fizz, 5, you'd print buzz. At 15, you'd print fizz buzz. So a very basic problem, in the same sort of reverse a string level type of thing. And most people, whether it's nerves, whether it's just not getting accustomed to that, and understandably so, I tend to agree that a lot of these problems, but at some very low level, you should be able to solve these things. So doing those, there's lots of resources out there. I think where a lot of people go wrong is, one, they don't fill out apps soon enough and start interviewing in the correct fashion. And 2, I think people don't realize how much time it takes to like actually get to a point where you can pass an interview. You just need to put the time in and effort. And it's not like a lot of skills where you can, if you put, 10 hours in on a Monday, every Monday, it's nothing equivalent to putting in 2 hours every day, 7 days a week. Like it's just that consistency builds upon each other so much. And you have to practice and practice and practice. And if you can find a way to actually enjoy it, what you're doing, that makes it much easier. So what I would say in terms of like leveling up and scaling up is give yourself lots of mediums to be successful and to learn and grow. Because there are going to be days that you don't want to do this, and that's fine. There's days that you don't want to go to work, but you still go to work because you need a paycheck. It's the same thing, except you're the only one holding yourself accountable. We can hold ourselves accountable to go to work most of the time, but we can't when it's like extracurricular, right? Like this. So reading books, going to conferences, going to meetups, watching YouTube tutorials, building projects, doing algorithms. Like, there are a ton of different ways that you can continue to take one step forward to be a better engineer. That, it's better than you saying, I just don't want to do algorithms today, so I'm not going to do it. Okay, fine. Go build something. Okay, you don't want to do that either. Go watch go to a meetup, go network, go read a book. There's tons of different ways that you can improve. And so, taking that mentality as well will help you, land an interview because you're making sure that you're growing no matter what. And at that point, it doesn't become a if, because that's one of the things I think a lot of people, and I try to correct the verbiage from some of my mentees as well. Like, if this happens, it's not, none of this is an if. It's not if you get a job.
When?
It's when. And because you're putting in, there's nothing that you put 3 to 4 hours a day in every single day you don't accomplish, right? Like if I wanted to go get a 6-pack abs, and I'm nowhere near that. If I wanted to go do that, then I would eat right every day and I would exercise every day, and it would be some amount of time before that would happen, assuming I'm doing the right things with exercise and the right thing of eating. I don't know exactly when, but I'm doing the right actions to get there. And there's a lot of moving parts and all that, but you're putting the effort and energy in and headed in the right direction so that it will happen. And it's a little harder because you don't have faith, right? Like if you sat somebody down and guaranteed them, hey, if you do 4 hours a day, there's a job for you, then they could mentally get there, right? Like they'd say, yes, I guarantee you do this for 4 hours a day job. But the fact that there's a little bit of logic, there's a little bit of risk, there's a little bit of like, hey, like, well, maybe it'll be 5 months, maybe it'll be 2 months. Like there's a little bit of that unknown. Sometimes people lose faith. And that's one of the things you have to have as well, is you have to understand that like you're doing these things and you're increasing your chance of success. And that you'll get there, and you have to just stay on sort of the straight and narrow and not lose faith.
So we've come to the mental issue. Okay. So how can a junior web developers going to interviews after interviews and going like this for months, and there is a technical skills that you need, but you need also the mental skills. How can you handle with this kind of uncertainty and failure? What are your tips doing mental work on yourself?
Yeah, so like earlier you made a good point about like companies don't really want to hire junior engineers, and like that's there's a truth to that. It's like and so when you're presenting yourself, you really want to present yourself as a senior engineer that just doesn't have any, or at least a mid-level engineer that just doesn't have any resume experience. You're an engineer with no resume experience, right? So they're kind of getting a discount, right? And that's kind of what they're looking for when they're looking for junior engineers. So, a couple things that help to build that persona is just understanding what the work environment's like and not seeming as green, and understanding what it's like to work in corporate America, or the corporate world rather. And so a couple books I'd recommend to just get in the right mindset is, one, I'd recommend everyone, regardless of where you're at in your career, read The Clean Coder. The Clean Coder is about mentality as a software engineer and how to progress and how to interact with the business. And then I'd also recommend, for those people who don't have a lot of insight into the industry as a whole, to read The Complete Software Developer's Career Guide, which is it's a very large book that really covers a whole bunch of the domains of the software industry at a very high level, like 100 different topics. So I'd really recommend that, so that you can kind of have a better idea and a little bit more confidence. Because, one of the things that is kind of frustrating is you don't know what you don't know. And it's kind of sounds dumb to say, but like,
no, it's
you
not
know,
done.
you don't, I remember just trying to learn to code, going on Google and typing in stuff, and I'm just typing in the wrong thing to not even find the result that I'm looking for. And over time, you get better, and you know what sort of keywords and what it is that you're looking for. And you're going into an industry which a lot of people, they're not coming from technical backgrounds. They're not project managers at tech companies. They're like, used to be like education teachers, or maybe it's their first real career. They're transferring from a server job, or they have just construction, or whatever it is, things that have nothing to do with software. And so filling in that gaps helps with the confidence, helps so that these things don't catch you off, and that you can kind of have a high level understanding of sort of where you're at now. Besides that, I would say you have to, and this is going to be hard for a lot of people, have somewhat of a bit of an indifference. If you are, what I mean by that is, you obviously want to be very eager and very passionate, but when you go in for these interviews, you can't be invested emotionally into them, because if I said that you have a 1 in 10 chance of landing a job in any interview, so roughly you should get a job after about 10 interviews, I think that's fine. I think that's a fair and reasonably understandable, percentage to take. It's probably higher than that, but let's just say that's it. So that means that you're going to be let down 9 times. If you're invested emotionally, that's going to delay you from getting back on your feet and grinding out, going the next day.
But you cannot not be invested in emotionally because you want it so much. So
yes,
you need to maybe understand that it will take time. It will be one interview out of 20 jobs that they will get an offer from a company. You just need to know this fact. But to be emotional and to be invested, if you're not invested emotionally, you don't care, but you must care because you want this. So
I think the key, and I've talked again with a lot of my mentees about how to like handle emotion, which is kind of maybe not something people would think we would talk about in sort of a software engineering mentorship, but so much of this is a mental game, and your emotions impact your mental. So it's not that you shouldn't experience these emotions, but you shouldn't be surprised that these emotions come. So I think
to control them. Maybe you should control them.
Exactly. Like I expect them to be upset when they don't get an interview. That things don't happen. But they shouldn't be surprised that they're upset, because when you're surprised, instead of ideally what I want from them is this unfortunate emotion comes through them and it passes through them. They experience it momentarily and it passes through. But when you're surprised, I feel like you have a tendency to hold on to that emotion longer, because you have to work through it. And that's why I set them up with the expectation that they're going to fail, and it's okay. That, when it does happen, that they go, damn, that really sucked. And maybe for a day they're bummed out and they're back on it. Right. When in the past I've been in that position, and a lot of my mentoring is like going through the grind. Being self-taught, you deal with a lot of different avenues when it comes to the interview process, and sort of, and going through it and seeing what worked for me, what didn't work for me. And so when you do these interviews, it's okay that you absorb out. Like I see these, I invest time, things don't work out, and it hits you for a second and then it passes through. You experience it, it passes through, and it's about having it pass through you as quickly as possible. So don't be surprised, because when you hold on to it for 3-4 days, you're really losing 3-4 days of productivity. And when you stop for 3-4 days, you take 3-4 day breaks, it's like you're taking 2 weeks off because it just compounds. And so we want to keep that momentum going.
Yes, I think that maybe the attitude should be that the interview, maybe even if nobody took you for this job, and maybe you were unable to answer one question or two questions, you should not consider it a fail. You should consider it an experience, and you should take these two questions that you was not able to do on the interview, and try to go home and practice and do it at home and maybe learn more, because most probably you will get these two questions in other interviews. So maybe take this experience not as a failure, take this interview and bad interview not as failure, but as an experience that will help you to improve yourself. And if you spend a day improving yourself, for me, it's okay.
Yeah,
Because-
absolutely. I mean, that's part of the reason you interview early, fill in the gaps. Like, where is it? Eliminate the theoretical and go into the practical, right? I tell people all the time, you don't know what to study, go look at the job apps. Like, if that's, if your goal is to work for somebody, not build your own product, then go see what people are hiring for. You say, hey, what's junior front end engineer role in the areas I'm looking for? Because you could learn a million different things. Software, there's a million different languages, frameworks, packages. So narrow it down, figure out what people are there, look at 100 job apps, and then
focus is very important.
Yeah, and that's exactly how I did. I was like, I don't really know what to learn. Like, I know how to do this. I looked at 100 junior front end engineer roles. I wrote down the sort of recommended, and I just did tally marks. And I said, look, okay, great, these are the tally marks. And then I organized them based off of like, what's the framework, what's the language, what's other, and figured it out from there. Now, ideally, what should happen if you're coming from a boot camp is they've done that for you, right? So it's not something you have to do. But if you're truly going the self-taught route on your own, there are additional sort of hurdles you have to look at.
Okay, and can you maybe share your experience? How much time it took you to get your first job, and how difficult it was?
Yeah, sure. So I dropped out of college and took on a job at as a technology trainer, and it's kind of like a business analyst slash technical writer type role. And from there, I studied for about 8 months before I started filling out apps, and within a month I had a job offer. Now I applied all the way across the US. So I moved to Florida. I've been in Florida for 5 years now. So of those 8 months, I would study for about 4 hours a day during the weekdays. And on the weekends, I would put in about 10 plus on a Saturday and on a Sunday. And so I did that pretty much every single day. Every single day. I was sort of all in. And I think that's one thing that I found makes me successful is made me successful is there's no going back. It was like, I stopped going to school. I'm living on my own, grinding it out. I'm in a job that's okay. I don't really like it, but I like, it's there to pay the bills, get somewhat relevant experience, and just studied every single day for 8 months, did meetups, did everything I could think of, and built a couple projects. And that's basically how much time it took for me.
Yeah. Okay. So I think it was very interesting, and I hope that junior web developers will be inspired from your experience and from your tips. Hope I'm sure that it will help them. And maybe you can briefly share the mentoring program, what it's all about, how many weeks, how much time every week, what's on the program.
Yeah, so sure. So MentorCruise is a platform, so you can find a bunch of different mentors. So it's going to vary based on the mentor. I'll tell you what I do. So it's a paid mentoring platform, so prices vary as well. for me, I'm in the top like 1/10 of 1% of mentors. I've had 33 mentees and a 5-star review. So I'm more in that proven asset of mentors, sort of, so we discussed with the engineers. And I meet with everyone for about 30 minutes a week. Every single week we meet for 30 minutes, and then there's unlimited chat that you can sort of send. And if things come up in between. And so to book me as a mentor, it's a monthly sort of subscription at $450 a month. And that's I guess US dollars, just to be clear. That's what's going on. So we have 4 meetings a month, and then unlimited chat during the week. And we make sure to accomplish the goals. If the goal is to go from a junior engineer to senior engineer, we do that. If the goal is to jump jobs, we do that. If the goal is to get a job, we do that. It could be anything from career advice to resume, building a resume and your LinkedIn, working with your GitHub and sort of building the reputation needed to get to where you want to
go. So every person can be a mentor? How?
Yeah, on the platform you apply, and then they review if you are if you meet their requirements, right? So you submit your LinkedIn and your resume and their review, and they see if you're somebody that they think will be able to provide good mentorship. So there's a bit of a filtering out process there. Now, when you're searching, like for instance, if you're looking for front-end engineering, I'm probably a good mentor for you. But if you're looking for back-end, I wouldn't be the best. I could help some, but not my expertise. So you might, if you want to look like maybe you're looking for someone with C#, you want a little bit more technical, less than I get a lot of people are looking for like career advancement and not necessarily tech advancement. But there are people who, know Java and know C#, and you can search by that to find those engineers that align to that. So I think last I saw, there's about 800 mentors on the platform, quite a variety. So you can find something that will adhere to your needs more and more.
I've never heard about this program, but it sounds interesting, and I understand the need, because I think the biggest problem of these young people is that they are like in incubator. If they are in college or in boot camp, they are wrapping them and they're all together, but when they're finished, they're on their own, and most of them feel alone, and they don't have a guide. And I think that the mentor is exactly the person that can help them after they are out of the college or boot camp or whatever.
Yeah, and the program itself, if you've never used it before, has a 7-day free trial, because you can set it up and kind of check it out to see if like it's for you. But I would encourage a lot of people to, there are mentors as cheap as $100 a month. And, again, what they offer what they offer varies based on there. But even at the sort of higher price model, like where I'm at about $450, I always find it interesting, because occasionally what will happen is you have people like book the trial and get like a free meeting and then go on, which is fine. That's what the trial's there for. But they don't have any intention of signing up. And it's always kind of a bummer, because I know what value like the mentoring can bring to like recent boot camp grads, like to get you. But people will go and spend like $15,000 on a boot camp, but the idea that they're going to spend $450 a month after that to go and land a role, to help them land a role, for some reason is something that they suffer with. And I would encourage most people who don't have jobs right out of boot camp, or if you've gone 30 days and you don't feel like you're close to getting a job right out of boot camp, get yourself a mentor as quickly as you can, because you need to keep that momentum going, and that it will pay for itself almost immediately, right? Like it's, even if you have
not immediately, because it might take time, but
yeah,
it will take. It probably will pay for itself.
Yeah, it'll pay for itself very quickly. But I would encourage people to do that and not delay the start of their career. That is where the real damage comes in. It's not the couple $100s a month you're going to spend on mentoring or advice or whatnot. It's going to be in the act. Before you know it, it's very easy to fall into like, I spent 3 months doing this, and then I'm going to take a month off, and then a month comes into 3 months, and before you know it, you're then seeking a mentor a year and a half later instead of a month and a half later. And you could have had a year plus of work experience and paychecks and growth and all that sort of stuff. And not everyone needs one. I've never had a mentor, but also not everyone fits in the going to college or going to coding boot camp or going to self-taught route. We're all different, but I would encourage people to consider mentoring very similar. It's just investing in your education, and you're working with professionals who have been there, done it themselves, and can help unblock you and get you there quicker. So if you're struggling, I would highly encourage people to check it out.
So you're working as mentor, you're building courses, and you're working in Amazon. And when do you sleep?
I sleep plenty, but it's a lot of juggling calendar invites and having an understanding girlfriend and things like that. So I don't do too much work on the weekends except when she works. So she works as a bartender, so sometimes the nights are free for me to work. So
Okay, I think that it was very interesting, because in the previous two talks, I was talking to junior developers. Now one of them is senior, maybe in both, but they are not mentors. But you are a mentor, and it shed a light on this aspect, and also the tips are very good. So I have enjoyed the talk, and I hope that, as I said in the beginning, that junior web developer will be inspired from this video and will benefit from it.
all right, good stuff.
Okay.